Trump's and Zelensky's meeting didn't go as planned, to say the least. Guys, what we saw on Friday in the Oval Office was one of the most heated exchanges we have ever seen between two presidents, including also the US Vice President, who, as soon as he spoke out, the fireworks were let off, let's just say it in that way. But we will talk about that, and we will talk about the situation regarding Ukraine and Russia, because it's a very complex and interesting and intricate, if that's a word, I think it is, one. So we'll talk about that specifically in today's video, and I'll just tell you some things. I'm not gonna take sides with regards of who's right, Russia or Ukraine, because I don't know much about its history, but I want to talk about what the solutions are, what Trump is trying to do, and those sorts of things. That's what I'm interested in, frankly. So we'll talk about that, we'll talk about Europe, we'll talk about Ukraine, and we'll talk about Russia and America. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and see you with the start of this video. So let's start by talking about what happened, more or less. And Russia invaded Ukraine 3 years ago. I think it was February 24th, unless I'm mistaken. And Russia invaded Ukraine. And this conflict, in my opinion, could have been very easily prevented. And this is not something I just say, but I've heard Jeffrey Sachs say this very wisely. And I'll play you the clip, but basically he talked about this in I don't think it was a press conference, in an interview he gave at the European Union Parliament or something like that. He was talking with a member of the European Parliament who was interviewing him, and he said that America just had to say that Ukraine was not going to join NATO and the war would have been prevented. And he also begged some White House officials to say that publicly, and even those White House officials agreed that Ukraine was not going to join NATO. So he basically told them, I'm talking about Jeffrey Sachs, well, why on earth are you going to start a war for something which is not even real? Doesn't make any sense. I'll play the clip because it's interesting. You saw, he basically said what I told you. And this is very interesting. I believe, guys, that this war, other than Russia, it was also pushed by NATO and the US. I think it's very probable and plausible. I'm not refusing to condemn the invasion of Russia, because that's wrong. I mean, they shouldn't have invaded. But I think it's a more nuanced situation than some people believe. I think it's very amateurish and naive to believe that it's black and white. There certainly can be more white towards one side and more black towards the other side. There is no doubt about it. But to believe that this is just black and white is totally fallible. And I think the US and NATO, especially US, is definitely involved in this. There is no doubt about it. But with regards to for example, the Budapest Memorandum in 1994, and there is some controversy around that, because Russia is saying that there was an agreement which was being made orally that NATO was not going to move an inch eastward. And ever since that memorandum was signed, ever since the deal was made, NATO expanded 16 countries eastward. This is Russia's claim, but this was not official. I checked it. I wanted to be sure because I had some memories that it was official. It wasn't. But it is not official, even though they say it was made orally, even though some people have given incoherent information and saying, yes, there was this agreement made. So this is a big controversy which gives Russia plausible deniability. With regards to Ukraine, the deal was certainly broken by Russia. I mean, there is no doubt about it, because the deal included respecting the sovereignty of Ukraine at that time. And by that, I mean even Crimea. So the deal was broken by Russia effectively in 2014 when they took Crimea. And it is going to be broken again, I think, when these peace deals are made, because I don't see how Ukraine can regain its 2014 territory. Crimea, it's, I think, impossible, but I think that also regaining the eastern territory is impossible, frankly. And this is sad. I'm not saying it is not, but I just want to try to understand which is the possible solution, frankly. So this is the whole situation regarding the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, and Russia broke the deal, and Zelensky said that claimed that Russia broke ceasefire deals 25 or 21 times, either one of those two numbers. So it's a very complex situation. We know that Russia is a war machine. They've started many wars, but as I said, I'm not gonna get into the specifics regarding why the war started. I have some sort of very vague ideas, but I'm not gonna get into that. I want to get into the solutions with this conflict because I speak with people and people are angry at Trump and those sorts of things. But the question I'd like to ask all of you is, what's the other possible solution? And please remember to live in reality, not in delusion, because some people are thinking about some very utopian solutions, stuff like let's give Ukraine trillions of dollars and let's make them regain the territory back. Okay, that's not gonna happen. I don't see that happening. Frankly, I don't think Europe has even got the money, to be honest. I don't think Europe has even got the capability to do something like that, and especially I don't think Europe has got the intention to do something like that. Therefore, that sounds unrealistic to me. And this war has been in a stagnant, is that the correct word? This war has been in a stall for 3 years, more or less. 2 years, for a very long time. Like 2.5 years ago, Russia had occupied 19.6% of territory, and now it is 19.2% of territory. So nothing has changed in 2 years. Ukraine is resisting thanks to Western aid. I talk about both European and American aid, and Russia is attacking. Both sides have lost almost 1 million people. I think Russia 700 or 800,000, and Ukraine 900,000. I don't want to be wrong, but these more or less are the numbers. So this conflict doesn't seem to have a solution. And in general, the Russia-Ukraine conflict doesn't seem to have a solution. Now, what Trump wants to do, in my opinion, and people need to know this, Trump has written The Art of the Deal. And by that I mean, Trump says something which is exaggerated in order to get to his real goal. This is his strategy. It's always been like that. Trump says things which are outlandish and crazy, but he does it on purpose so he gets to his real goal. And this is what he's trying to do now. Trump has toned down his rhetoric towards Putin, not because he doesn't know that Putin is a dictator, not because he doesn't know that the elections in Russia are rigged, not because he doesn't know that Russia invaded Ukraine. He knows all of this. But as he said in the meeting with Zelensky in the Oval Office, we can't shit talk about Putin and then pretend that we're gonna get a seat at the table. We're gonna even have a chance to negotiate. And he's right about that.
You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America. And for the good of the world, I'm aligned with the world.
And I personally don't care about what politicians say. I care about what they do. Because politics and morality are two things which don't go hand in hand, to say the least. They're two opposites. Complete opposites. Like, nobody cares about morality in politics. It's not moral. It's politics. It's being pragmatic, efficient, and politics is about getting results. It's about doing stuff, not saying morality. It's immoral to support Russia. It's immoral to let Putin to the negotiation table. Well, maybe it is. But how on earth are we going to end this conflict other than by talking with Putin? Trying, at least. So I think that what Trump is trying to do is getting a ceasefire to stop the killing and sort of make the situation a little bit better and a little bit calmer, especially, and get Putin and Zelensky and maybe also Europe to the table. And I think it's something which we should support. I think that the endeavor of trying to get both Putin and Zelensky to the negotiation table, or US or Ukrainian and Russian representatives to the negotiation table, I think that's a great thing. And we need to understand this. We need to live in reality, I think. That's my opinion. That's the problem I've got with all of these people going against Trump. I happen to see loads of people going against Trump, which is perfectly fine. But none of them gives any plausible solution. So my very simple question to all of these people is, what on earth can be done aside from what Trump is going to do, which I'll tell you what's going to be, I think. But Trump wants to get a ceasefire deal and then make an agreement with both Putin and Zelensky. The problem is this: the agreement will possibly, very possibly, be broken by Russia, as they did in 2022 and 2013. Now, with Trump, it is not going to happen, I think, because it didn't happen the first time. And I think it is because of Trump's unpredictability. And Trump is a guy who people fear. And the reason is very simple, because Trump is unpredictable. And Trump makes threats, and people are afraid of threats. And that's why Trump managed to not start any war and de-escalate conflicts in his first term, and he's doing the same now, I think, because if Trump hadn't won, we wouldn't even be talking about this. Whether you like it or not is a thing, but we wouldn't even be mentioning peace. It would be war, war, war. I think we would have gotten to a nuclear conflict. I believe that this is my opinion, but maybe I'm wrong. So people are afraid of Trump's unpredictability, and Putin knows, in my opinion, that if he were to do something, if he were to cross a line with Trump, then it would be really complex to deal with Trump. And it would be really bad for him, given the consequences that breaking promises with DJT would be. But let's talk about now the mineral deal, which Zelensky was supposed to sign. And I think that, as Trump said, would have been a form of deterrence in and of itself. Because the mineral deal included that the US was going to extract minerals also from territory which was occupied by Russia. And that means that having US workers and possibly even US military, I'm not sure about the latter, there, that would have meant deterrence. Because I believe, and I'll tell you why I believe this. I don't know if you know this, but I'll tell you the story. Trump basically, and I'll play the clip because it's interesting. Trump basically told the Taliban, when he was president the first time around, he was in a meeting with the Taliban, and he was like, he said that to his translator: if you do any harm to any American, I will kill you. And translator looked at Trump flabbergasted. He was like, are you crazy? And then Trump told him, tell him. And then in Afghanistan, no Americans died in 2 years. Something like that happened. I'll play the clip because it's very interesting.
President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you. And the translator goes, and Trump goes, tell him.
Yes.
Tell him what I said. Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room.
Sure did.
Do you know for 18 months not a single American was killed in Afghanistan?
Sure did.
That's the definition of strength. That's what I'm talking about.
So they said basically what I told you. And I think that Trump would more or less say the same things to Putin. Not the same things, because Putin is the representative of Russia, bigger country, but it would be, I think the vibe would be that one. So that would be a form of deterrence in and of itself. Having US personnel extracting minerals in that very tense territory. This is my opinion. And he wanted to get this mineral deal in order to get them to the ceasefire and then do the peace agreement. The problem is that Russia could very well break another ceasefire deal, as they did. Why not? And I think it wouldn't be under Trump, it would be under someone else who's weaker, like Biden, we saw it. Or even a Republican, like I don't think J.D. Vance can keep Putin under control as well as Trump. Personally speaking, this is my opinion. So this is the problem. And how do we solve it? I frankly don't have many solutions. The problem is that Europe is weak. Europe doesn't have defense, and that's the main problem. Because if Europe had had more defense, this war would have never begun. Because Russia wouldn't have attacked Europe; it wouldn't have been convenient. But Ukraine is defended by a weak continent, which is now Europe. Europe is a weak continent, and I am a European. I love Europe. Nobody loves Europe more than I do. And it's sad to see what's happening with Europe. But Europe doesn't have the money, Europe doesn't have the army, and Europe hasn't given Ukraine enough money. You either go all in or all out. It's either one of the two, it's all or nothing. Europe should have either armed Ukraine way more than it has now for Ukraine to resist and not be occupied partially, or the war, or they should have tried to do negotiations with Putin. I think, personally speaking. But the problem is that Europe is completely inept. Its leaders are totally inept, totally incompetent. They are a disaster. They are bureaucrats. I despise all of them, but irrespective of whether you like them personally, they are totally inept people. And they don't come up with any solution whatsoever. So what can Europe do? I think Europe should arm Ukraine more than it is now and try and gain back territory and try to get Ukraine on the negotiation table in an even condition, even. And by even, I mean even militarily, so that Ukraine has got the same power of Russia. But Europe would need to give Ukraine way more aid than it has given now. Will Europe do this? No. I personally think they will not, because they're totally inept and they're not decisive. So they will not do this. I don't see this happening, personally. And this is the solution which a guy I spoke to was talking about, and I think it's utopic, because Europe is inept. It is not utopic, economically speaking, nor militarily speaking, probably, but given the leaders Europe has got, how inept they are, sounds difficult to me. What's probably, and especially, let's not forget that Trump is pushing for peace very heavily. He's tired of this, he wants to end it as soon as possible. Trump is pissed off the war hasn't ended already. So we've got pressure from America. It's a big mess. What's going to happen and what's going to be Trump's peace deal? I think that the most probable and reasonable outcome is that Russia keeps the territory. And I don't know whether it is going to go officially to Russia or if it is going to be independent and it's going to be just occupied by Russia, which is not the same, but it's still Russian territory, or at least it is still under Russian control, so it doesn't change much. The US is going to get the minerals from Ukraine, and I heard about a potential deal between Russia and the US for a mineral deal, which could be beneficiary to both America and the US and Russia. And Ukraine will get some security guarantees. When asked about peacekeeping troops, Trump said that Putin had no problem with it. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. Could be true, but I think it is more probably false. And Ukraine is certainly the big loser. But the problem here is this. How can Ukraine get anything better under the current circumstances, with the current US administration, with the current inept leadership of Europe, and with the current leadership of Russia? How can Ukraine get any better solution and outcome than the one which I have just laid out? That's the problem. I'm not even saying it's good for Ukraine, because that's total garbage. It's certainly a disaster for Ukraine. But I frankly don't see any other outcome other than even worse outcomes, because Zelensky is doing a disaster. Zelensky could very well be on the verge of committing the biggest suicide I've ever seen politically in my lifetime, which has been short, so it's not a big deal. But Zelensky and his advisors should be immediately fired, because they're not doing a good job when it comes to trying to have a stable relationship with Trump. He's bad-mouthing Trump. He has bad-mouthed Trump, and that doesn't work in his favor. And upon that, when it comes to the meeting, it doesn't surprise me, because JD Vance was angry at Zelensky already after Munich, and so was Marco Rubio. They didn't get along. So this was not very unexpected. But the problem now is that the US has cut aid for Ukraine. So Ukraine, I think, must end this conflict. Because if they don't end this conflict, then without US aid, I think Ukraine will lose even more territory. Because they will lose 50-60% of the aid they've got. And maybe they will resist for a few months, but after that, gets tricky. So Zelensky could very well easily be committing a suicide of the likes I have never seen before. Because imagine losing more territory and then begging for a ceasefire deal. So that's the worst possible outcome there could be for Zelensky and for Ukraine. I think in the end, peace will be made. It's going to be bad for Ukraine, good for America, and good for Russia. But I think honestly, I think it's inevitable. If Europe were stronger and more competent, it could be avoided. But since that's not the case, and since I'm trying to sort of think about the most realistic outcome, that's what's going to happen personally. And I want to hear your comments. And especially, I don't see, maybe I'm short-sighted, but honestly, I don't think there is any other outcome other than worse outcomes for Ukraine. Last but not least, why is Trump aligning with Putin? Because Trump is a nationalist, and Trump is isolationist, and Trump cares about America's interests. Trump doesn't care about Europe. Couldn't care less. And that's why he's doing this. And it's not unexpected. We knew it was going to happen. People who are surprised by this don't know Trump. Me, who knows Trump since 6 months, knew this was going to happen. So I'm surprised that some people are surprised here. So this is the situation we're looking at. And Trump is aligning with Putin because America's interests happen to be the same as Russia's interests. So this is the whole explanation, in my opinion, as to why Trump is doing what he's doing. And it's not looking good for Europe. But in the long term, this could be good for Europe because Europe maybe will toughen up a little bit, smarten up, get stronger, get richer, and get independent. And that, in the long term, could be better. And we could either dismantle the bureaucracy or make the European Union decent and not devastating as it is now. So Europe has got chances, and Europe, if it takes advantage of this, we can get out of this stronger in long term and say some struggle at the beginning was worth it. This is my whole opinion. But Europe needs to fix immigration, and that's a big one. But we have spoken about that at length. Thank you very much for listening to all of this. See you with the next days with new videos, and it's a pleasure for me always. And let me know your thoughts about this, because I'm sure most of you will disagree with these takes, or most of you will be skeptical about them. But as I said, the problem is that I don't see any other outcome which could be achieved, frankly. And I don't see any other good outcome for Ukraine. Thank you very much, and see you soon.